Alright, hi everyone, this is To, and we're doing another track breakdown today. A little bit more of a freestyle. I don't have the fancy camera setup or anything, I'm just talking to the webcam. Ableton is open, I'm gonna talk you through the project. I hope this works, please let me know if it does or it doesn't. Minimal editing as well, let's just kind of roll with it. Anyway, we're taking a look at Heavendrop today from my Worldbuilding Part 2 EP. It has become a bit of a favorite, at least among friends and stuff, so I think it might be interesting. And yeah, let's just get into it. So let's actually start by looking at the return tracks here, because as I'm going to kind of isolate the elements, you're always going to be able to hear the return tracks, so maybe you just get this out of the way. And it's also going to be very familiar if you looked at if you watched the previous video about Little Leaf. So we just have reverb and a phase return track. The reverb sounds like this, it's just a hybrid reverb. On the bigger spaces and the shimmer, interestingly the shimmer is set to 7 semitones and not a full octave as it usually is. So it's actually adding a bit of a harmony to everything, which is interesting. Let me just isolate that. Otherwise it's pretty straightforward as far as the reverb goes. I'm cutting off all of the lower mid stuff, and it's not really applied to everything as well. It's mostly for the outro, as well as some of the melodic elements here, like this piano. Now the phase though, this is pretty important to the track, so similarly to, again, Little Leaf, we're just cutting off the lows and mids. This is the Particle Alliance phaser preset, which I use quite a bit. We're sidechaining it to the pulse, which I'm going to get to in just a minute, and just cleaning it up with Soothe, adding some width and some volume. And yeah, almost everything is going into this phaser thing, and it sounds like this. Yeah, I love doing this on my tracks if I'm going for this kind of glitchy mood to it, because it just adds this modulation that's always kind of going around you, and I think it works really well. Also in the outro for the ambient part, I think it's pretty cool. So I mentioned this pulse track, which is what most of the things are sidechained to. What this is just I added this DS kick, like the Ableton stock kick to it, and I'm going to unmute it, and I just lay down the quarter note pattern here. And I mute it, and then if you go to the sidechain and you change the source to pulse and here to pre-effects, this is muted, but you can still get the signal here and use it for the sidechaining. So this is just for moments where, whether or not there is a kick playing at the time, the pulse is still going, so I'm still getting the kick signal, and it's triggering the sidechain. So for most of the first part of the track, not really for the ambient part, I have this pulse and things are sidechained to it. I also do this quite a bit on most of my tracks. It just makes it easier, because sometimes you want to add some variation to the kick, sometimes you want to mute it completely, and this just keeps the pulse of the track going at all times. So let's actually look at this in sections this time, and not really track by track like I did before. Let's start with the first section here, which sounds like this. Which is fairly straightforward. We just have our kick, which is it's a nice kick that I found, and I'm using the Ableton's drum sampler here, just to be able to lay down the MIDI as I want it, and although this one is pretty straightforward. And I'm also doing this little thing, which it's arguable how much of a difference this is making, but I have an LFO with a random shape triggering or mapped to the length of the kick. So sometimes the kick hits are going to be a bit shorter, sometimes they're going to be a bit longer. Yeah, just adding a tiny bit of variation, but honestly speaking, not making a lot of difference there. And then we have the bass, which I'm going to get to next. But first, let's look at this drone element, which is actually going throughout most of the track in the end. And it sounds like this. There's 2 layers to it. So this, you can tell, it's called Cells. This comes from the Olafur Arnold Cells plugin by Spitfire Audio, I believe. And this is bounced out, but what I did here is I just created a sequence of notes within our key, And I added a bunch of randomization to the velocity of these notes, so that because of the way cells work, like it's based on the velocity of the notes, and it triggers other notes within the scale that you give it. So by adding a lot of randomization to the velocity, you're getting a lot of randomization of which notes are getting triggered in the final kind of sound. And this is the cell synth patch, something pretty basic. And yeah, it's probably drowned in reverb as well. I don't think there's any reverse shenanigans going on here, but sometimes I do it as well. But yeah, it sounds fairly straightforward, and it's just kind of a nice bed to the kick and the bass. And then I double it with this trick that I've also shown before, where I just double it and I add auto shift with 12 semitones up to it, which makes it sound a bit broken and weird in a good way. Yeah, it pitches it up, but it also introduces a bunch of these artifacts, which for the mood of this track, it's kind of perfect. And then the bass, like the bass is a pretty huge part of this track. It's kind of the main thing, honestly. It's maybe like the surprise element that we get, and it sounds like this. Yeah, it's very cool. I mean, if you want to know like where I didn't rip this off from, but it's fairly inspired by like something like Fresh Static Snow by Porter Robinson, especially like the live version, like this very noisy bass. I wanted to get something like that going, and this is what I came up with. And it's actually a pretty straightforward sound, so I'm just using this MPE Her Dasher bass preset, and it sounds great, like out of the gate here. I think I just messed around with the sub amount, and then I'm automating the filter cutoff here at some points. Yeah, sometimes I'm lowering it a bit, but otherwise it's pretty straightforward. What makes it interesting, I think, is the pattern that I write here with the MIDI. So we're really just going from F sharp to A, but we're adding these like lower notes, lower F sharps here, as well as these transition notes between a couple of the other notes. And also this higher note, which sounds like this, like especially the lower one sounds really broken, almost like the bass is struggling to catch up with itself. It sounds like this. So when you're going from the nice sounding F sharp to this lower one, it almost sounds like something is broken. Yeah, and I think that just ends up being much more interesting than just having like the F sharp one here all the way through. And yeah, just adding these like quick transition notes just gives it kind of a new rhythm to it, and I think it sounds pretty cool. Same thing here for the higher octave on the A. It's just a little like quick jump, like it almost feels like the bass itself is unstable in some way. It just like jumps off to the next octave, it dips down and becomes broken on the lower octave, and I think it's pretty cool. And this is an 11/4 pattern, which is pretty random. I'm not sure how I came up with that, but it sounds good to me. So that's how it came about. And the last thing that comes up on this first section here is this ARP element, which is also repeated throughout most of the first part of the track, and it sounds like this. So this is just a very simple ARP preset. I believe it's from Choreographs, the Slate and Ash plugin. And it's cool because it's always playing the same chord like throughout the whole track, and it's always just kind of fading in until it reaches its loudest point at the end of each bar. So it's always just kind of like leading us back home to this place, to this chord, to this sound, and I think it works pretty well in that sense. So this intro part I repeated twice, so like this whole section, and then we go for it again with some new elements. And there's this tiny break between them, which I thought sounded cool as well. So it's really just like a tiny break. It just kind of leaves you like hanging and waiting. Like, again, it almost feels like something is broken again, like I was saying with the bass. And I think that's pretty cool. So for the second repeat, like we still are on this 11/4 pattern before we change, and we introduce a couple of elements here. So notably the percussion comes in with these 3 layers, which sound like this. I just call it like top percussion. And then the kick gets faster here as well. And these are also from choreographs from a drum machine preset. I don't really remember which one, but it's super straightforward. I just, this one is like a full beat thing that you can still hear like the trace of a kick there, but I just cut off all of the lower stuff and I just got the top percussion. And there's some OTT on it as well, which is making it sound a bit more powerful. Like without it sounds like this. Yeah, quite a bit of like this crunchy higher end stuff, which I really like. And yeah, otherwise things pretty much remain the same. There's only this element that starts to peek in. Like this is going to play a bigger part a bit forward on the track, but it sounds like this. It's working as part of the build up to the drop here, so it sounds like this. Which you can hear, this is like something that's reversed, so I'm going to reverse it again so you can hear what it sounds like. Yeah, this is inside this group called Delayed Stuff, and that's really exactly what it is. I believe this is a kalimba plastic preset from Ableton that I'm playing a bunch of notes on, and it has a bunch of delay on it, and then it's reversed, so it ends up sounding like this. And yeah, all of these things are kind of coming together as a big build-up to our drop here, so let's play that. So yeah, like before, like we have a little silence after the end of the 11/4 pattern. This time it's twice as long, and then we change to the new section. So now we're in 6/4, which we're going to stay in 6/4 for the. Actually, that's not true. For most of the rest of the track, we do go back to the 11/4 pattern here. But yeah, this is the next section where. It's a bit of kind of transition interlude leading into this section. So there's quite a bit more stuff going on now, and we can start by the delay stuff that I previously mentioned. So we have this one that we looked at. We have the piano, which I think honestly might just be the same pattern as the kalimba with a piano sound. There's definitely like OTT/distortion going on here as well. Like you can hear the crunchy high end again. And then we have another kalimba. Yeah, this is much less processed. You can really hear like the plucky kind of hitting sound of it. So that's pretty cool. And then we bring in this organ pattern here, which is also going to play a bit of a role. And it sounds like this. It's just a nice little melody that I created on top of everything else with this kind of organ sound. I think this is also from choreographs. And then there's a bunch of processing on it. Also very noisy, which I like, and it fits the rest of the track as well. What else do we have? So this pretty much all stays the same. I do introduce a harmony to the bass here. So at this point, the bass, yeah, we can look at the bass pattern here now. So we're in 6/4, and we're not going from this F sharp to A anymore. Basically, we're doing D for 6 bars, A for 4, and then E for 2. But again, instead of just having the straight note, we're doing this broken bass kind of thing. So we're going down to lower octave, transition note, and higher octave here. So it sounds like this. Yeah. And we're also introducing this harmony to the bass, which sounds like this. Yeah, which is just replicating the bass line on like, I believe like 2 octaves and a fifth up. And it's just adding something on this register, like higher register to it. Yeah, I think that works pretty well. And we're also introducing this analog. I'm calling it analog because it's the name of the Ableton synth. And it sounds like this. We're just kind of playing the chords here. So we were really driving home this DAE pattern that I mentioned. So yeah, and then we're also doing with this kind of a similar sound, but with a lot of glide to it. We have this like little harmony going up on top of the chords. And you can very much hear like the pulse coming back in again here. So on the beginning of this new section, the pulse is gone. Like you can hear nothing's really sidechained to it. But then the pulse comes in at some point here. Yeah, and everything just kind of sticks to that pulse. This is just like basically adding a bunch of notes on top of each other to create like this build up, which works well with the analog, the chords that we're doing. So yeah. Because this is all kind of a build up to our next section, which is when the beat really drops on this part. So last thing here is that I introduced this sample. You can hear a bunch of kids screaming and stuff like that. It sounds like this. It's, as it says here, it's beach atmosphere, and I guess in Leipzig. I think you can actually hear some like German words being spoken here. This is just something I got from Free Sound, so it's like a royalty-free kind of sound library, found sound, stuff like that. And I felt like this track really needed something a bit organic here, some human elements to it, and yeah, the fact that it's like kids playing at the beach, it really contributes to this like playful atmosphere of the track, like with the kalimbas and the pianos like playing around and being reversed and stuff like that. This whole part feels very playful, so I think that's that was the direction, and I think this fits well. So yeah, this is the transition section, and then we can go to the beat drop here. Which I can go quickly through the percussion here. So we still have the same kick going on. We have a couple of snares. This riser coming in and out. This is also a snare pattern, but it's also like very, like not really on time always. It's just kind of adding some little snaps to it, which is cool. This is just an ambience thing. This is water sounds. Yeah, I love scattering like water and stuff like that on my percussion loops. I think it adds some nice, interesting like textures, some organic elements to it. So I think that works well. And then we have the shaker. And this one comes in, which is also a shaker. Then finally we have this, which I don't even know what it is, to be honest. Okay, it's just a little... Okay, it's just adding a bit of a highlight, because this is when the piano comes in as well. And I think it's hammering on a little bit the piano and adding a bit more of a punchy attack to it. And that's kind of it for the percussion. There's I mean, a good few elements, but there's not a lot going on here in terms of processing. I mean, you can see like on this percussion, I have some redux and some compression. This one, I just have fresh air, adding a bit more of a presence on the high end, and that's really about it. The pattern itself is also not overly complicated. It's really quite straightforward. And yeah, in this section, as I said before, I'm messing around with the cutoff, the filter cutoff for the bass. So let's isolate that, because with everything else going on, like this very grating sound of the bass, this would have gotten a bit annoying with everything else going on. So I turned it down quite a bit here. And I use it also to add a bit of a dynamic variation to it. So it's going up and then it's falling down quite aggressively here. And that's contributing to the whole overall dynamics of the track. So it sounds like this. Like opening up. Yeah. And finally, we also have these two melodic elements here. So there's this choir-ish, not really a choir, it's just a voice that sounds like this. This is the same vocal samples that I used on Little Leaf, the previous track breakdown, and on a bunch of my tracks, like on Curiosity, for example. This is like the main lead of it. This is not taking a lead here in any way, just adding a bunch of textures to it. It's really breathy, very airy, so I think it sounds really nice with everything else. Then I have the lead piano here, which is also like almost exactly the same thing as I'm doing in Little Leaf, where I have the main piano, I'm bouncing it down and adding the auto shift. So the same thing we did before with the drone, so it gets a bit glitchy. Yeah, and we're also having some like chopped up piano parts here. Yeah, and then the lead one sounds a bit more straightforward. I do have this score thing playing the lower octave and the upper fifth to it, so I'm just like playing one note, but everything's getting a bit more body to it, and the lead sounds like this. And this leads us to this section here, which is kind of another transition / interlude. So eventually we're going to reach this part, which is the ambient outro part, but we have these two sections of interlude. So this one, we're staying on the same bass pattern, we're staying on the same beat, although a bit stripped down. We're not really adding anything new. We are bringing this element to the front, the organ thing. So this just goes a couple of times. I didn't mention these, but this is just like white noise, or pink noise, I guess. For the transitions, like every time there's a drop, like there's a psh, like this is also something I do basically on every track. And then we go to the final transition before the ambient shift, which is going back to the 11/4 pattern from the intro, and it sounds like this. So we're doing pretty much the same thing we were doing in the intro now. Even the percussion is stripped back to almost exactly the intro, but we do add this element, which is another cells, Oliver Arnold cells drone, but it sounds like this. So you can hear it's a much higher register, so probably it might even be the same pattern, but just a couple of octaves up. And then there's clearly some OTT or distortion shenanigans going on here. It's also like very crunchy and there's a bit of distortion to it. Heavily sidechained to the pulse here. And it's just an interesting texture here. Like originally I had it pretty much exactly like the intro, but this is like making it a bit more rough in some way. And we're also adding this, which is the exact same pattern as the organ here that I showed you before, but on a guitar plugin, guitar sound, with quite a bit of distortion as well, so that's why it's called distortion guitar. And it's just kind of driving the point home that, okay, this section, this sound is kind of the lead, so I'm doubling it with a different sound. Yeah, and then it's a pretty abrupt kind of shift to the outro/ambient section here, which I actually have everything grouped up in one group here. So let's open that up. I mean, some stuff here comes back. So I have the noise is actually running through most of this final section. And I have this transition that I'm going to show you as well. And then there's a percussion as well, which are the exact same elements as before, but they are like significantly filtered down. Like, so there's a low cut, and it sounds, I'm going to show you how it sounds already. So yeah, just the same pattern as before, but filtered down. And yeah, this is the transition that I wanted to talk about, which sounds like this. So this is, I call it Portal TX. What this means is that I use the plugin called Portal from Output, I believe. There's this kind of like the glitchy delay kind of thing that there's a preset for it, which I use quite a bit. And I added it to the drums, and then I just bounce it out, just the wet delay signal. So it's kind of like these remnants of the percussion parts from before. And it's just adding some interesting texture here. Just like these little clicks and noises going around, which, you know, if we're doing such a big transition from the heavy, bassy, noisy part to this ambient section, it's nice to have these kinds of sounds to kind of ease ourselves into that. So otherwise, the outro, this is how it sounds in general first. So for the whole time here, we're sticking to this chord progression that we had here on the 6/4 part, which is just like the 6 times D and then 4 times A, 2 times E. The bass here is a much more straightforward thing. Let's actually start there. So we just have a pretty simple bass sound, some roar, some chorus, and there's a bit of attack to it. And then I'm just doubling it and playing it 19 semitones up. So again, 1 octave and 1/7 to give it a bit of a harmony. And yeah, pretty straightforward here. There's really not much to it. It's just playing the same thing over and over as a bed for everything else. So I have a couple of drone sounds here. These are both, what are these? Okay. So this one sounds like this. This is actually Olaf Arnold Cells again. Great plugin, very versatile, by the way. Yeah, just a pretty straightforward kind of drone sound with a bunch of Valhalla supermassive reverb. And then I'm doubling it with this meld preset, which is really nice. This is one that I have used also on a couple of tracks because of this swarm sign thing. There's quite a bit of movement to it, and for a track like, or a section of a track like this, I think it works really well to have a bit of movement there and not just have like a static drone. There's also a bunch of reverb. There's an LFO, which is not mapped to anything. Things that happen, you know. What else do we have? We have this high element here, which is bounced out, but this is, so it sounds like this. This is just like a very high note that is coming in and out. So this is bounced out, but I think I did it like I just had like this very high note playing continuously, and I added an LFO, just making it come and go basically. With I guess a bit of randomization as well, because it's not always getting to the same volume. Sometimes it's getting louder, sometimes it's getting a bit quieter, but it's just, yeah, I think it works really well because it's almost not very nice or clean, but it brings a little bit, it's almost like a siren or something, and it brings something interesting to the whole ambient part, because these kind of ambient sections, like where everything is very clean, it can be too clean, it can be a bit boring. So between like these transition noises, like this high sound, the movement in this drone, this is what I like to do to ambient sections to make it still sound a bit interesting, at least to me. And then there's another layer here, which is this wavetable again. Same, pretty similar sound as the bass actually. Sounds like this, with quite a bit of attack this time. Yeah, and we're just playing the chords here again. Really nice sound actually, this one, even though it's pretty buried in the mix here. And yeah, these are the kind of drony things that stay for most of the time. And then to add some dynamics to it and some sections within the section, we have a couple of elements going on in and out here. So we have this handpan, which sounds like this. It's kind of fading in. So this is playing the chords, like from the chord progression here. It's arpeggiated, and there's the low octave Ableton preset here, which is basically giving you the chance of playing a note higher or lower in this interval based on the chance that you give it. So in practice, what this means is that every once in a while, it's going to play a note above the note that is actually on the MIDI. So it's just also bringing a bit of randomness to it. And the handpan and with the arpeggiator, it becomes very like bouncy. There's quite a bit of movement, and I think that works really well for the mood here. And I'm combining it with this analog thing, and this is grouped into plucks. So yeah, I'm going for plucky sounds on this part. Yeah, this analog is just playing like this very simple pattern, just repeating it all the way. And it's kind of playing off of the kalimba, or they're playing off of each other to create a nice and interesting rhythm here. And it works well like as a way to introduce the beat, like it brings in a bit of movement first. Okay, something's happening. And then everything else comes in. So I think that works pretty well. Yeah, that's when the percussion comes back, as I told you before, with the low cut, and we have here the ending piano. So this section is like kind of the climax of the ambient part, where we have a lead melody. It's very nice, very beautiful. It sounds like this. So the left hand of the piano is just playing chord triads here, kind of as straightforward as it can be. Whereas the right hand is playing the lead here. And I'm doing the trick again of playing a chord with 19 semitones. So there's like a very high like doubling going on here. So yeah, just a nice little melody on top of it. And there is also this thing, which is just adding a bit more texture to the piano, so it's just a little chopped up part of the piano with a bunch of delay on it. Yeah, I think that's cool. It, especially like when it's hitting on like on the one, it adds a bit of a bounce to everything, and I think that works quite well. Then a couple more things that we have here are this piano pad. This is a sound that I came up with like 2 years ago or something, and then I'm still using a ton. This is just like the upright piano Ableton preset, but the sample is reversed. Then I'm chopping off like the main attack here, so I just have the tail, EQ, compressor, distortion, delay. There's quite a bit going on here, but it's just playing the chords and it sounds like this. The compression is absurd here, but it actually works well. It's nice because it's also not a very static drone at all. Like there's like these reverse delay kind of flutters going on to it, and I think it works really well with everything else. And finally we have, actually we have two more things here. So we have the guitars that come in at some point here. So after the piano starts, I wanted a bit more texture to it, so I added some acoustic guitar. which sounds like this. So this is just my acoustic guitar that I'm just connecting directly to my interface and bringing into Ableton. And there's not a lot going on here as well. Like, it's pretty buried in the mix. So what I do is I try to make it a bit like, because I mean, now I do, but at the point I didn't really know how to make it sound nice. So I just made it sound like old and broken in some way. Like, there's a vintage sampler Redux preset here. There's quite a bit of low cut. There's an erosion here to make it sound noisy. So it all sounds like it's coming from far away or from some like old speaker or something. And it just ends up being just contributing as a texture to it. As a texture and also as a human element, because you can see like the performance here on the guitar is not perfect. And everything else is perfect because it's MIDI. So it brings a nice human element to it, in my opinion, which I think is often quite necessary. Wow, jump cut here. Sorry about that. Finally, we have this wave sound. So what this is, I mean, I'm just going to leave it playing while I explain it because it's not always going to be really doing anything. So I just have this synth here with a ton of attack, a ton of release, an LFO on this wave shaper curve on the saturator. So it's only occasionally kind of fading in. And what I did with this is I mapped an envelope follower to the gain of this nature sample. So in practice, what happens is when the synth sound is actually coming through, it's not playing the synth sound, it's increasing the gain of this nature sample. So we get these little waves of nature sounds in it. So yeah, and then there's just a bit of processing here in terms of delay and stuff like that. But it's really subtle and it's just coming in like now. And it's, again, another way of adding some kind of organic, kind of unpredictable element to it, where, again, everything else is not organic, it's very predictable. So yeah, just bringing some humanness to it. And that's kind of it. In the end, we finished with this piano part, which we move on, I think, to a different chord here. Or actually, not really. We stay kind of in the same place. And the lead piano plays this pattern, which might be familiar. Which is just the bass line from the very first part. So it's just like this little 11/4 passage. Like nothing else is changing to 11/4, just the piano is doing the exact same pattern as the 11/4 bass intro, which I thought was just a nice way to run everything out and close the track with that. And yeah, that's kind of it. I hope this wasn't too much of a rambling kind of explanation, and I hope it was interesting. If you'd like to see more videos about how I made certain tracks, if you have a specific track in mind, please let me know in the comments what you would like to hear. Otherwise, thank you for watching. Again, I hope it was interesting, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye. Thank you.